I'm starting the recording now. Um, so I would like to introduce Moon Zlotnick, who is from Minnesota, and um, Moon has been an astrologer for many years, and is going to be one of the peer group leaders at I-Astrologer. Those of you who are not familiar with a peer group, I'm going to share the screen here. Just one moment. Those who are not familiar with a peer group, it is a signature program for OPA that is tailored for people who already are practicing astrology, who have at least a 6 months practice. And the purpose of this is to basically help practicing astrologer share what is going on with their practice with other practicing astrologers. So that's why it's called peer-to-peer process. And we realize that astrologers are so isolated. They have to, be very strong, facing a great deal of criticism and misunderstanding from the wide world. And so we're very individualistic by nature. And this also means that quite often um, we don't really connect with our fellow astrologers. And this is an opportunity to speak about our problems, speak about the things that are concerning and that maybe we're not very, um, we're struggling with, whether it's a client, whether it's a schedule. And so for the first day, we go very deep into that. What happens during our practice? What are our boundaries? How much do we charge? What's the best way to attract clients? And what are some of the issues that come up when we are in the consultation room? And we each go and discuss basically our vulnerabilities and our struggles. And obviously, we each then share and help each other. On the second day, we share our techniques, how we work with astrology, what house system we use, how long are our sessions, and then we practice on each other using those different techniques. And this way we learn how other astrologers are doing it and what they emphasize, because we know our charts, but then when someone else reads it, what do they draw from it? And we learn this way to not only be the client, be the astrologer, but also look at a client astrologer interaction as a witness. And it's invaluable. I mean, what happens during those sessions is very intimate, and it's really a deep transformative process. And this leads to the third day, which is about our year forward. What do we want to achieve as professionals this coming year? Where are our blockages? Are we sustaining ourselves financially? How to improve that? And so we speak about the marketing aspect, our business plans, and our website, everything that has to do with the platform we're working with. So this process is called the peer group work, and it's part of OPA's certification program. So as people go through this process 3 times over with 9-month intervals, along with consulting skills and along with a course on astronomy, we basically are able to certify the astrologer and show that this astrologer can read a chart and that they convey the information professionally and that they're involved with the community and they're professional in the way they deliver. So the certification program is not about teaching astrology or new techniques, but it's more about how do we practice. So once you're certified, it basically means that OPA has faith in you and has assessed that you are, ethical, that you are professional, that you're credible, and that we recommend you. So it's a different certification process than many other organizations or schools. So Moon is going to lead one. I'm going to lead one too. And we just have a few spots left for the peer group. So Moon began practicing in 1975 and got a formal training with Zip Dobbins in Los Angeles. And she's worked with hundreds of students and clients, created a 3-year program for astrologers, and taught astrology to beginners and seasons alike. And Moon has done a lot of recent research on the death chart, which I share with her. And you can check her website, which is what, Moon? What's the URL?
It's astrology, astrologybymoonrabbit.com.
So if you're interested, the death chart is not about predicting your death, but it's about looking at when someone's passing, the moment of passing. Just like we have a birth chart and we can analyze it, there's a death chart that can be analyzed to further understand the process for this person. Is that correct, Moon? Is that?
Yes, and I also use it as a way to help the person who's grieving understand kind of why the moment in time the person left is relevant for them.
So do you have anything you'd like to share before we start? As I introduce you, is there anything you'd like people to know about your practice?
Well, I would say that the most interesting thing for me right now is actually doing death charts for people. And 2 days ago, I did a death chart for a woman about her dog. And I kind of imagined that would happen, that people would want to know, especially people who have very intimate relationships with their animals, that people would want to know why, why their animal left them at a certain time. And so she felt like it was really helpful just to hear what I had to say.
Thank you, Moon. And Kay Taylor is going to lead the integrative consulting skills. Kay Taylor has worked with ESAR's consulting skills, and we've worked ourselves with ESAR for many years. But since consulting skills is such an important part of OPA, we really felt it was time to develop our own program as well. And Kay has tremendous experience, both as a practicing astrologer and as someone who led the consulting skills. And it sold out at I-Astrologer. It was booked, actually one of the first programs to be sold out. So Kay offers a transformational view of astrology, weaving together a unique integration of evolutionary astrology, intuitive mastery, and spiritual psychology, psychosynthesis. Graduated from ESAR and CJR, and is OPA certified. So Kay has a book, The Soul Pathway, which was published 2 years ago, and she lives in the Bay Area. So thank you, Kay, for joining us.
Thank you.
Do you want to share anything else?
No, just I'm very excited about what we're going to be talking about today. Consulting skills and the professional practice for the astrologers is something that matters to me a lot. I feel like it's a really good thing that we're doing both in the I-Astrologer retreat and also in this webinar today.
Great. And so Laura is also with us, and many people know Laura from NORWAC. She's the organizer and owner of NORWAC, previously with her mother, Maggie Nalbandian. And it's one of the landmarks of the astrology community. Many, great astrologers emerge from NORWAC in Seattle. And yet, Laura has also her private practice, and will be speaking at I-Astrologer about, first of all, her own path, what made her an astrologer. And she's a second generation astrologer, so she was born into it. And yet, even if you are born into it, it's not a given that you are able to make it and to be successful. One of our focal point of I-Astrologer is not just to encourage people to be astrologers and to do a good job, but it is to thrive as an astrologer, to sustain yourself financially, to make it, and to really live in abundance. So we bring the sky and the earth. That's why, you know, we have our Uranus in Taurus reference. And I think Laura, uh, having so much experience and having grown into this environment, will have a lot to share. And one of her other presentation will be about public speaking, what to expect, you know, what is required, how to be successful as a public speaker. And Laura is also going to be, along with myself and Roy Gillett and Anne Ortley, is going to be a mentor at I-Astrologer. And that means that we're going to gather in small groups to help those who are in the group really discuss their struggles, discuss their next steps, and receive, you know, direct guidance from someone who has that experience. So as a second generation astrologer and owner of NORWAC, which was established in '84, Laura has a love of teaching and she lectures at conferences around the world. Her focus on the Pluto method in evolutionary astrology, originally developed by Jeffrey Green, and she's been teaching that since 1986. She also loves coordinating astrology conference and is, you know, she says currently working on UAC, which was when we posted this. And I think there's a sign of relief there that it's
yeah. Yes.
So you have your life back.
Mostly, yes. I still winding down a little bit of it, but I do definitely have my life back. UAC was an amazing project. Took 3 years of my life working with a marvelous team, and I think it frankly couldn't have turned out too much better than it did. I'm very pleased and very proud of the efforts that we all put into it.
Yeah, I think that we can all agree that it was a really rewarding, powerful gathering and sharing of knowledge, both on a community level and on an academic level. So thank you. Thank you for taking the time now, today, to speak about what it means to be an astrologer today. I hope those of you who are joining are thinking about, you know, taking astrology seriously, if you haven't done it already. Some of you will be joining I-Astrologer. Just know that this is a program that takes place every 3 years. So I hear people say, oh, I can't do it this year, I'm going to come next year. Well, guess what? There's no next year. It's going to be probably in 2021 or 2022. So we still have just a few places left. And you can still sign up. Go to the OPA website if you're interested. So there's just one question here. Moon, somebody wants you to repeat your website again.
Okay, it's Astrology by moonrabbit.com.
Wonderful. So our first theme for tonight, the common mistakes astrologers make in their practice that may sabotage their development, their success. And this, you know, is both seasoned astrologer as well as beginners. But I think mostly, you know, it is those who are in their preliminary steps building their practice. And when we make those mistakes and things don't work out the way we expect, we can be easily discouraged. And then we go back to our McDonald's job. because, you know, something didn't work out well. So I wonder, first of all, personally, if you had, you know, if you made some of those mistakes and you can share about it, or if you've seen it around you. So Laura, do you have?
I think one of the early mistakes that I have made, and I've seen others, is feeling like you had, and it felt like a real mistake, feeling like I had to give every bit of information that I possibly could, giving more of my time than was scheduled, not having clear boundaries. So giving my time away, I think, and so what that does, how I feel it's a mistake is that it does not present a professional frame. And I really think a professional frame in our lives, because we are professionals, just like any other profession, we need to treat ourselves as professionals. And so I think that in and of itself can be a level of a mistake to be made.
So do you personally have boundaries? What are your boundaries? How much time for reading? How long does your reading last? And what is your prep time?
Well, my readings are an hour, and I charge by the hour, so that when I get close to an hour, I let a client know we're approaching, not at the hour, but I keep track. So I let them know we may have 10 minutes left to wrap things up. If they wish, if they're looking kind of like they need to have more time, I let them know that I can add more time, that we can do it in 15-minute increments. They might only have one more question that might take 15 more minutes. And so then it would be a prorated process. A lot of clients will add a half hour, so it's prorated. Some will know that when I set my boundary, they know they've got 10 minutes, and they might ask, can I go over? And I said, well, I can prorate that for you. And they may decide in that moment that they've asked enough questions. What was your other question? You
How long prep time?
Oh, I'm kind of an anomaly. I would say I take probably 5 minutes, 10 minutes tops.
Mm-hmm.
So that I prep the chart. I have a philosophy about that. Part of my training back in the day by my mother and by Jeffrey Green, some of that was done in our store during our psychic fairs. We'd have probably 3-4 times a year. And I would do 20-minute readings. The chart would be handed to me. I would have to pretty much within 30 seconds or so start with something, start talking, and end at 20 minutes. I mean, there would be a bell system. My mother was very structured too. She'd have a bell at 5 minutes to go. And then at the end, there'd be another bell going off, and you'd have 5 minutes to wrap that up and, gently move them along their way. So in the early parts, I learned how to read a chart from a cold chart being put in front of me. So it led to sort of a philosophy of not wanting to have a predetermination of what I was looking at. So I do prep, which is all the chart work, print the chart, print my agreement form, print a copy of the chart for the client. I create transits, progressions. I make notes on the chart of in pencil, where the outer planets are, where the progressed moon is, without trying to give any interpretation in my mind to it. Then I might do a quick, I do some of the primary pairs by phase: Sun Moon phase, Saturn Moon phase, Mars Venus phase, and Jupiter Mercury phase. And that will take me no more than 10 minutes to accomplish.
You're not a typical Capricorn in that sense.
Nope. No, I'm not.
I can personally definitely agree that when I had my personal experience being a client of an astrologer who, gave me a 3-hour reading. And I felt that indeed it came from an insecurity from the astrologer who
Yes.
wanted to really cover every corner of the zodiac.
Yes.
And I got to a point where I couldn't really integrate anything.
You can't. There's only so much the brain and consciousness are going to be able to absorb. It's just not possible.
Yeah. So there's another question about if people pay you before or after the session, but I want to get to that a little later.
All right.
So Moon, what is your thought about a common mistake?
I think that a common mistake astrologers make is not spending enough time listening to their clients. And, this kind of goes along with what Laura was saying about preparing and how much preparing you do. Because if you go in and you have already kind of created a narrative from looking at what's happening in the heavens about what's going on in your client's life, many times that cannot be the case, or that maybe is going on in their lives, but it's not what they want to talk about. And so this whole notion for me is to spend the kind of maybe first 5 or 10 minutes talking to the person about what really is up for them now.
Exactly.
And I'm writing as they're doing that, so I have a list of everything that matters to them. And then I use the time that we've allotted really to address those issues. And sometimes that means that I don't address maybe 8/10 of the chart. Like there will be big things going on and I never get to them. But I'm really learning that people come with pretty specific notions about what it is that they want from a reading. And so I try and stay really close to the format that they've outlined for me. And sometimes it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that
what do you mean doesn't work?
It doesn't work because just as the session is coming to a conclusion, they'll say something like, oh, by the way, I just found out I had cancer, and that's, then we go to setting up another session to deal with that. But it's interesting because sometimes people are very direct about what they want from the astrologer, and sometimes they're doing a lot of avoidance. And so they'll put up a lot of smoke screens.
What I often realize is that also clients want to see if they can trust you, so they don't want to reveal everything, and they kind of expect you to pick it up in the chart. Yes. Like, is this astrologer really knowing their stuff? They should know that I'm, having a health crisis. And that's a whole other discussion, really. But I can see that part of the psychology of the client is, I don't know if I want to say everything right away.
Right. I so agree with Moon, that first part of my session is really finding out a bit about them, listening. And if they're a brand new client, the most direct question I ask them after they've done telling me a little bit about themselves, what do they do? I take notes. It helps me remember them the next time after seeing so many people. I will ask them directly, why are you here in my office today? What are you wanting from this session? Because I think this goes back to Moon, and I think that was one of my biggest mistakes as a young astrologer, is not asking that question and getting to the end of the session or partway through the session, even if I was just reading it from that moment, it was still coming from my agenda of what from the method I was using and not listening. So Moon, I think you're right on. And so partway through the session, they might be saying, well, really what I came here for was blah. And I didn't take the time to ask them why they were there.
Yeah, I feel like this is a really big deal. This balancing between how much we're giving the overview and allowing the client to begin to trust us, to know that we're seeing a lot about them and they don't have to tell us everything and we're going to just reword it and give it back to them. And yet, so we're evoking information from them, but we're also able to give them a bigger picture than maybe what they're seeing. And so I totally agree that that's a very important
Yeah.
point for us to be focused on as professional astrologers.
And I think, like, like we've discussed, I think knowing where they're coming, I personally ask for questions ahead of time through email, and you can be right there. But I also feel I've seen the other side where some astrologers are a bit, adopting the role of the psychologist and waiting for the client to speak and share. And it's almost like they listen too much and they don't do enough of the
I agree with
analysis.
you. I agree with you. I agree with you. I can give two short stories, and they are short. I remember early as a young astrologer starting my spiel about evolutionary astrology and the soul work based on their chart, but I had not stopped to ask why they were there. And partway through, she stopped me and she said, "Well, that's all well and good. About the soul work and all, but really, what I wanted to know was, would my golf game improve?"
Yeah.
Seriously, she was not joking. And which shocked me at that point. And I said, "Well, I really think that you are with the wrong astrologer for what you're asking." At that time, I was working in our bookstore, so she had already paid. Said, let's go get your money back, because it was only maybe 15, 20 minutes into the process. And I refunded her money and sent her on her way to another astrologer who I thought might be able to help her. And of course, I have a bit of Aquarius, so I couldn't help imparting a bit of sarcasm. And I just said, "The answer to your question is practice." The other was a woman who really came in with a hidden agenda. She wanted to know when her daughter was going to get married. And again, I did not charge her, did not go forward with the reading. And I said again, typical to me, I said, don't you think the most important question is, will she be happy? Versus, will she be married? And so I ended it with that. So again, finding out why people are here in your office, why they would like to have a reading. Some people say, "I don't know." Some people say, "Because my wife or my husband sent me." Some people say, "I'm curious." But I will often dig just a little bit more, and if that's not forthcoming, then I move forward.
Wonderful. I mean, thanks. These are important anecdotes because these are things us astrologer, all encounter sooner or later.
Right.
So, Kay, do you have something that you recognize as a mistake that?
Yes, I think one of the major mistakes early astrologers make is using too much astrology language. One of the things I always do is ask people the first thing, who referred you, and then how much you know about astrology. And it's almost like a repetitive theme. In some words, people will say, "I've had a few astrology readings, but frankly, I don't remember any of it, and I didn't understand most of it at the time." And I feel like that is one of the biggest flaws we have as a community. And I understand it. And I remember when I was early in my astrology, and I would, use a lot more astrological words than I do now. And I would feel the people glazing over, and I would be glazing over. It would just all be in the head. And I'd quickly sort of shift out of that. But that's a tendency, and I find with my students that this is something that's a learning challenge as well, because it's hard enough to be learning the astrology that then when they're doing their first initial readings, it's almost in their own mind they have to say the astrology in order to know what it means and then to take the next step in translating. So by the time we get to offer paid readings for people, I feel like we need to be able to see the astrology planet sign aspect in our mind and be able to translate it and be able to speak in English for most of the reading, so that people understand, unless they're an astrology student themselves and you want to let them know how you're getting something. But even then, your way of interpreting something may be quite different than that person normally thinks of the aspect for themselves.
Yes, I had exactly that when a client was coming and we talked about a certain chart dynamic. Then I didn't use the astrology, and then she asked me, "So how do you see that in the chart?" Because she was, knowledgeable, and I mentioned it, and she said, "No, that doesn't mean that." And I was like, "Okay, so why don't you have a reading for yourself?" And that's something that I learned. Not, it's normal that we each have our way of interpreting things, but I think it's important that we keep the astrology for the astrologer and not turn this into a classroom. It's a consultation. It's not a astrology class. But on the other hand, the opposite argument, you can have people that think, well, maybe she's reading my body language. She's not reading the chart. And how much of astrology, should we bring any astrology in our conversation?
Yeah, I feel we should bring some astrology in.
Yeah.
I feel like we're also teaching people a little bit. Like, I want people to know their north node and their south node and sun, moon, rising. If they know absolutely nothing, that at least they walk away that they've heard that. But I agree with you. If you don't use a little astrology, they're wondering where you got it from. And I feel more and more people, like, I don't know about the rest of you, but I've noticed a big difference in the last 20 years that with the internet, people are much more educated about astrology, and they are reading things and they're listening to podcasts. And so they tend to come in with more knowledge than they used to come in with, for sure.
Well, the other thing that I think can bring astrology into the conversation without making it like really heavy with names and aspects is to talk about cycles and to talk about energies and to talk about patterns. And everybody understands cycles, and so you don't have to go off on a long kind of description about, it's this particular planet. But sometimes I'll tell people, this particular planet returns every 29 years or returns every 12 years. And we'll go back to the last time they had this particular cycle 12 years ago to gather information about the one that they're in now. And so it's kind of about astrology without filling it up with lots of terms.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I have a couple of other points I wanted to bring up about mistakes, being in this profession a long time, but you go ahead.
Before getting to other points, regarding the astrology, do you give your clients a copy of their chart?
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, I give them a copy out of Solar Fire. That is the beginner version that has the symbol key at the bottom right, so that they can look and see, at least, know that the circle with the dot is the sun, and so on. So, and the different symbols for the 12 signs of the zodiac. Some people will throw it away. Some people will keep it. It just depends.
The other reason for giving them a copy of their chart is to have them look at the birth data and make sure that that's exactly correct.
So do you do that at first?
Yes.
That's the very first thing.
Yes. That's one of my mistakes I made early on. And now I do every single time, because it has led to either making the mistake myself or having a client insist that I made the error when I was pretty sure I didn't. And they gave me the incorrect information and required that I do the reading all over again. So this way I have them actually sign off on the form that I have for them, that they're required to look at the data and agree that that's the data they gave me, and that's the reading I'm giving based on that data.
So that's, I think, a mistake we may all have experienced, is when we get into a reading and we realize we don't have the right chart.
Right. Now, again, if they've given us incorrect data, but they think it's the correct one, there's nothing I can do about that. But as long as I'm getting a reading off the data that we both agree that they gave me, then
No, but if it isn't, I mean, one of the things that would be important as a mistake is to first of all confirm the information.
absolutely, right off the bat. It's the first thing, just like Moon, it's one of the first things I do.
Yeah, me too. And I learned that the hard way also, getting in the reading and then you realize you don't have the right thing, whether it's your fault or their fault. It's very hard to correct after you've said a lot of things that aren't right. So
Yes.
I verify it verbally at the beginning. And so it's on the recording.
Yep.
But I only give the paper charts. I don't print out paper while I'm working. I work from the screen. So only if people ask me for the chart do I give them a copy.
But the other thing happened to me once is that the person was really enthusiastic about the reading, and then we realized we have the wrong chart.
Yeah.
I've had that happen.
So that was puzzling. But then I looked at the chart and I could see there were so many, similar patterns. One was a moon in Leo, the other one was a fifth house moon or something like that, and that's even more, of a quandary or
A little disconcerting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we all learn from that mistake to keep, the chart accurate and make sure. Any other points you had?
Yeah, I had one more, but Moon, did you have something?
Oh, I had, this happened one time, but it really was kind of fascinating to me. So this was back in the kind of early days, as you're calling them, Laura. And, I got into starting a reading with this woman. And then maybe after about 10 or 12 minutes, we saw that I had put in computed the chart. It was one day wrong. And so I said, I'm really so sorry. A few things are going to change. And why don't we just set up a time later in the week and we'll do the corrected chart. And she said to me, well, you made a mistake, so I'm never coming back to you.
Wow.
That was the end of the meeting. Very, very harsh. But it really brought something home to me about how people really want to be seen, and they want to be important, and they want to feel like you're invested in really doing the best job you can. And so, her birthday, I got her birthday wrong. It was the right year, the right time, everything, but the wrong birthday. And so that kind of started me to asking people, let's just double check that, you were born exactly on this day at this time.
Exactly. That's hard.
Yeah.
Other points you mentioned?
The one I remember doing a few times when I was younger, a younger astrologer, was trying to answer questions I either didn't have a real strong enough technique in to answer, or answering questions. For instance, I'm not a medical astrologer, not going to pretend to be a medical astrologer, and I think I tried early on to answer some questions in that way, and not being strong enough, I shouldn't have done it. So I learned my lesson early, thank goodness, so if somebody asks me a question that I don't feel I have the ability to answer, or it's outside my comfortable range of answering, you often get people asking, when is my spouse going to die? For me, that's never something I'm going to answer, whether I had a technique for it or not, just from my own personal point of view. But, I've had, so anyway, knowing what my limitation is within my technique, and being okay with that, and being able to tell somebody, I can't help you with that, but I can refer you to somebody who can.
Absolutely. Wonderful. I think these are the other thing maybe another issue that people may experience with beginning their practice, and even maybe as they are more seasoned, is how payment issues. And that's a question that came up also in the chat box. Laura, you were talking about people taking extra time. How do you charge them for those extra 15 minutes? Are they?
All right. So when I was working in the bookstore, that's where I started my career in astrology at a bookstore, the bookstore my mother started. we had our offices in the back, or in one case, in another building we were in, we were actually on a different floor. So all clients had to pay first. So, and sometimes people are so dazed and confused, they kind of walk out of your office and
forget.
And so from that point of view, we always took the money first. Here in my office, I don't take the money first. I wait till the end. If they want to add time, then I will add that to their bill, and either take cash, check, a local check, or use a, my Square thing for taking credit cards.
Okay. So this brings us to a question that maybe you, if you look back, you made a mistake about, or did you undercharge or overcharge? Was that an issue ever in your practice?
Overcharging someone? No. I think that there have certainly been issues of undercharging early on, again, giving away time, feeling like, again, in the last 5 minutes, they asked that important question that didn't get asked in the first 55 minutes. And so feeling like I need to take the time to answer that, so that ending up giving them extra time. Mm-hmm.
We actually have a whole session with Anne Ortley about the right way to charge, and it's an excellent, one of these webinar, excellent presentation that I will recommend everyone you can get. We're going to make these talks available also to non-participant of people who are not coming to I-Astrologer, because we feel it's, there's a lot of pertinent information. But anyone else, Kay or Moon, do you have any comment about charging appropriately, adequately?
Now, how do you guys do it?
I have a comment that's more pertaining to my students, because I'll have people who have studied with me for 3 years and maybe had other teachers before me, and they'll start doing readings, and their tendency is to charge way too little. And so I ask them to sit down and calculate how much money they've spent on classes, how much money they've spent on books, how much money they spent on webinars, and just to get some kind of a beginning understanding that all of these things really increases their value, that because of their training. So people who go and get PhDs charge more for whatever they're doing than people who don't have a degree. And so I try and get my students to think in terms of, the progression of their value based on the work that they've done to prepare themselves. So even like, spending the money to go to I-Astrologer, that really increases what somebody can charge in my mind, because they've done this real intensive kind of learning about how to promote themselves and how to present
Agreed,
themselves.
100%.
So if I have a new client that's not in my office, and I'm seeing them by Skype or by phone, they will have to pay ahead. I don't know them. I will send them a PayPal or a Square invoice, or they will have to pay me by credit card at the beginning of the reading. But if they're in my office, I wait till the end. And ongoing clients that I see, whether they're here in my office, particularly if I talk to them on the phone or by Skype, I'll send them an invoice. And I've never, ever in 30 plus years been stiffed by a client. I've always been.
Me either, Laura. Me either.
Yeah.
No, me either. And I always used to just take payment afterwards. I mean, even when I lived in New Mexico, people would just send me checks, before internet and after the reading. But what I've discovered recently is that so many people take prepayment that, and I do just online booking, that people would book online, and because I didn't require them to prepay, they got very nervous and anxious and felt they didn't have a session fully booked.
Oh.
So I now require prepayment from everybody who books their first time. And then after that, their credit card is in my system, and I charge them after their sessions. But I find that if you have good boundaries personally in the way you set your business up, and it's very professional, you draw professional people to you who know that they're going to pay, and they do pay. And yeah, I don't feel it has to be a big issue.
Now, another thing that comes up, especially for beginners, and I want to move to the other question, but I think that's important, especially as we want to, build our clientele and we want to practice and expand our reach. People are often bartering. And, a massage session for an astrology session, and that can be a slippery slope. What is your experience with that? I'm just going to stand up a moment because the sun is...
Okay. Oh, yeah.
I think early on I bartered. I had a lot of, I had some friends who were doing, or clients that were doing massage, and I think early on I bartered. I do not do that now. Even if they have a skill that I use, I would ask for payment and then I would pay them. I would say that there's one exception to that. Although we don't barter for astrology anymore. We barter for other things. So her services for my services for bookkeeping.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree. I bartered a lot in the beginning of my practice. I've been doing this 34 years now. And, in the early years, bartering was great. I felt like it got me clients I otherwise wouldn't have gotten. And I got to meet people and I referred people to them, like massage people. But at this point, I rarely barter. I just feel like it's cleaner to do the payment thing with everybody.
Well, I agree. Unless it really can help someone who's really in a tough corner, in a tough place. I think it is also for the client and for them as a massage therapist. You also want to be paid money. On their side, it's kind of the same practice. So I think it's fine under circumstances, but it shouldn't be, always the same. Otherwise, people take advantage of that. So our next question would be ethical consideration in the consulting room, which we've touched on. But are there any issues that you are very adamant about, that the astrologer can trespass some of these boundaries? I mean, I've heard recently some really, I would say, grave incidents that happened, especially following the Me Too movement. There are more stories that are coming out regarding astrologers abusing their power.
Yep.
But I wonder if, not even going that far, Kay, let's start with you. Do you have anything in mind that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the dual relationship issue is a very tricky one for us as astrologers. And talking about doing bartering takes us a little bit into that realm, because when you're bartering with someone, let's say you're getting a massage from them and they're massaging your naked body, and then you're doing a personal reading with them, you're getting to know each other very, very well. And what happens to most of us as astrologers is when we work with a person for a long time, we become very friendly with them, and we might care about them, and they start asking questions about our life. And it gets tricky, because you get into situations where it's just not as easy to be as professional, or they may do or say something that if it was a friend, you might have a different response, but on the other hand, they're also a client. So that's one thing that's changed for me a lot over the years, is a lot more boundary about who's a friend and who is a client. And
what about friends that become clients?
Yeah, and I do. I mean, I'll admit, I do readings for friends. but it's very specific. Like if we're talking about things and they have an issue, I don't bring out my computer and start doing the reading. I'm like, well, if you want to come and do a session, we'll do a session on that. So yes, friends become clients and clients become sort of friendly, and it blurs, but we have to realize that it puts us in tricky situations, and ultimately we have to honor the fact that we're in a special position with people when we are doing sessions for them. And I feel like sometimes we have to be like, there might be a way I might confront a friend on something, like if they hurt my feelings, that I might not do with a client because I feel like it might smash them because they hold me on some pedestal. So I'm more careful about that as the years have gone on.
So there's one comment here that is very interesting, and I don't read the full name of the person, so forgive me if I don't get it right. Win Kava. As a single person, I find it a bit offensive when astrologers assume that they need to direct the reading or guidance towards finding a relationship without asking me if that is important to me necessarily, or even a priority in my current circumstance. That's
That's actually one of the things that Alexandra and I are covering in the consulting skills training, around not assuming anything. And don't assume everybody wants a relationship. Don't assume anything about anything. So yeah, that's a very fine point.
Mm-hmm. Other points, Moon or Laura?
Yeah, I have a very strict policy about not talking about somebody else in a consultation without the other person's approval or agreement that that they've given permission for me to talk about them or look at their chart. Mm-hmm. That's a very clear cut. I will look at, if a parent comes in with the child's chart, I will look at the child's chart and talk to the parent about the child.
What age? What age is your limit?
Teenagers. I will talk about teenagers because parents come in with issues. But what's really important for me is I'm usually directing the parent back to their chart and what this is triggering for them and how they stay present to their child versus talking about the child. Is the child having the problem?
Mm-hmm. What if it's not possible?
There's derivative houses, Maurice.
What if it's not possible? I mean, derivative houses provide a certain amount of information, but it's different than looking at the actual chart of another person. What if it's not possible to have the chart of another person? I mean, their permission, such as...
You mean if somebody's deceased?
Deceased,
I'll look at a chart of a deceased person. I mean, that's a bit different, but what kind of circumstance are you talking about that they wouldn't be able to get permission?
Well, that they may feel embarrassed to ask about, the fact that they're doing an astrology reading, and there may be issues about, not wanting to share that they are doing astrology. I mean, it's understandable in our world.
I still won't do it. That's keeping a secret from somebody else, invading their privacy. I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want somebody doing that to me. I wouldn't do it to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with Laura on that.
And what do you think, Kay?
I understand it as an issue, but because I come out of the more metaphysical world originally as a channel, in that realm, like everybody knows everything about everybody. And if I get soul level approval from somebody to look at their energy field, that person may not be in the room. So I've evolved with the astrology to say that I will look at the chart of another person without their permission. But again, like you said about the way you would work with children or teenagers, I look at the other person's chart, but then I don't talk a lot about them as much as I talk about the person I'm talking to and what they need to know about the interaction in their own chart. And I also try to do the reading in a way that if the person was in the room, if the other person listened to the tape afterwards, I would feel good about everything I said about them, that I'm only speaking of them in the most open, positive way. And sometimes I even say, if this person was here, this is what I would want them to know. And so I feel okay with that. But I also understand your perspective. I think that it could go really badly doing a reading that way. And I've seen it harm people where someone has gotten hold of a recording of a reading, and the astrologer or psychic said terrible things about the person who was not in the room. It was very hurtful.
But if I found out somebody had done that, I just feel like it would be an invasion of my privacy, whether somebody said whatever, regardless of what the astrologer said or a psychic said or whatever it might be. Just for me, it would feel that way. So I extend that to other people.
There's a saying, what does he say? Someone's therapist knows everything about you. And I think it's actually, as far as we've worked with the peer group work, and this question keeps coming up, and there are different opinions. And I think that you will have some astrologers who are very adamant about, like you were mentioning, Moon, using derivative houses or using the chart of the person to address relationship, to address business relationships or parental relationships, and without using another chart. And there are those astrologers who feel that, if life is life, and you do need to address some of these private questions, and in a way that is not revealing, questions outside the scope. But I feel that it's a hugely controversial topic, and it does need to be further explored, because technically, yes, it would seem like it shouldn't happen, but just like you're confiding with someone and you need advice from someone, you will share some private questions about your relationship with
I think that's different, though. If my client comes in to ask me about their marriage or their relationship, I'm going to talk about, and they might share their information, tell me things about their client, or their partner, but looking at the other person's chart and then giving my client information about their relationship or about that person, not about the relationship, but about that person, is where I draw the line.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. It's knowing where to draw the line.
Yeah, this is just my line, and I think we all have to know where our lines are, and then if we, honor that and hold that from an honoring space, I think that's great.
Great.
I think one of the other is, for me, an ethical issue would be, I draw the line at not making, and probably we all do this, but it is an ethical issue for me, not making decisions for people. If somebody says to me, what do you think I should do? Well, here are your options. Here's your chart. Here are your options. Here are the transits. Here are the options. This is the range in which you can go, but it is your decision. It is your life. These are your choices to make.
Totally. Yeah.
Another one. Certainly as a teacher, I've had over the years, this hasn't happened recently, but back when I was much younger, I had male and female clients, or male and female students, profess their attraction or interest in me, regardless of the fact that I was married. And even if I wasn't married, that's a no-no. Having a relationship with a client or having a relationship with your student in any kind of intimate sexual way is a no-no. Friendship, fine. Relationship.
So what happens if there is an attraction, and if
I had an attraction to students before. You just don't do it.
What about Stephen Forrest married his initial client? I mean, it was a big love.
I can't speak about Stephen Forrest and his relationship. I don't know the particulars of it. I don't know the story, so I cannot speak to that. I just know my own history and my own experience, and know that even when I have been attracted to someone, that is a no. And they either, have to, if there was that situation where I could have been in a relationship with them, the relationship as it stood had to completely fold down and not be happening, being in a power position as their astrologer or a power position as their teacher, to then that has to go away.
So that's maybe the way to do it, is that
you have to
if
end
there
the
is, just separate the two and don't continue to be.
Yeah, you have to break off the one in order to start the other.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And I had that happen with a really good friend of mine, a male astrologer, who was working with a young woman who told him in a session that she was attracted to him. She was interested in him, and he was single. And so he immediately ended their professional relationship because he had some interest as well, and referred her to me to talk about ongoing astrology things after that, and also to talk about what situation they were in.
Mm-hmm.
And they end up getting married and being married for many, many years. But the minute that came out into the room that there was a mutual attraction, he ended it and referred her. And I thought that had integrity.
Yeah, I think that is the answer. You have to end the relationship, the dynamics of the current paradigm, which is either as astrologer or teacher, end that completely.
And then there's a follow-up question. If someone, assert their attraction to you, and you say no, it's not going to happen, but do you keep seeing them as clients after they've revealed that?
I've never had a client do that. I've only had students do that. And so if they were a client, I would see how it goes. And if it got uncomfortable and weird, then I would definitely end it. Students, I've had to end. One turned into a stalking situation where actually I had to go to court and get a court order. There were a couple of other strange ones that I had to end, kick them out of, stop them from coming to my classes because it just got too uncomfortable and weird. Others have worked their way through it and gotten over it, which I always tell them, you'll get over it. I promise.
Okay, great. Other points, Moon or Kay, that you'd like to bring?
Not at the moment.
And obviously, I think the obvious things about some of the things we've heard, people using the chart to manipulate the client into buying things,
right,
or into sexual favors. It's needless.
Or manipulating them into more readings by saying, in some way, by dropping some manipulative hint that they need and must come back in for more readings to spend more money to work this out. Yeah. I'm very clear. I'm not a therapist, and my clients should not treat me as such, and I will stop anyone from treating me as a therapist because I'm not trained as a therapist.
So our next point, tips to inspire your clients to come back, because we know, unlike psychologists who see clients regularly, weekly sometimes, most astrologers do a reading and don't see their clients for a long time, if at all, not because the reading wasn't good,
right,
but simply because of the format of this practice. And I know, Kay, you tend to have a different format, but in general, I think it's important from a, we spoke about being ethical, about not wanting to lure our clients back manipulatively, but we also could offer a service that's valuable over time. So from a marketing perspective, what's appropriate and what what can we do to do that?
Well, clients often ask me when I should come back, and I tell them no sooner than 6 months unless something's really like up. But usually clients come back around once a year. That can be a bit different, depends on what's up in a client's life or how much work there needs to be done because of certain level of transits. But there are so many. We here in this panel of a certain generation, right? So the younger generation, they have other ways of doing things, but coming out of an era where we didn't have the internet in the way we have it now. I mean, I started as an astrologer before the internet became a thing, and before we had personal computers to calculate our charts. We had the Digicomp, the DR70, to print out those little strips of charts. And so we didn't have the kinds of things. So we basically, I would literally back in the day send out a postcard. I'd have a mailing list, and they would literally get a postcard in the mail saying happy birthday. I would have a mailing list for each month. And they would get a postcard in the mail. Happy birthday, it's your birthday, and for your birthday you would get X as a discount off of my hourly rate. Usually it was like $25 off the hourly rate if you come in and make an appointment during the month of your birth. So if you're a September birthday and you make your appointment and the appointment happens within the month of September, then I will give you the $25 discount off of your reading. So that, and now, of course, it's not postcards, it's automated emails that go out and remind people of their birthdays and other information. And certainly that kind of thing has worked for me.
So birthday reminders and a special deal for their birthday.
Yes, and I might every now and then send out a big flash email to my group end of the year saying if you buy, just before my rate might go up, if you buy a reading now, then you can use it in the coming year at the current rate.
Great. Okay.
Well, when I was building my practice, I always used to give clients referral discounts. So they would get $10 off a reading for every client they referred. And some people made a business out of it to get virtually free readings and referred a lot of people. But I wanted to come back to what you just said, Laura, too, because I do my practice differently. And because I am also a hypnotherapist and I do the psychosynthesis process work with people. So I'm okay with people coming more regularly because it's not just a regular reading, it's a mixture of astrology and healing. But I think even if a person's simply an astrologer, I feel like it's helpful for us to educate clients on what might be possible with their astrology sessions, and that they might come in for their first reading and it's all new and they get that roadmap, but they may wish to pursue different topics from the chart. They may wish to do a review. And many people think that that's all they can do is come once a year. And so if people want to build their business, I feel like they can offer different things. Like I noticed Demetra George, has all these different readings on her website. You can come for a Saturn reading, or, Mars is doing something right now, come and do that. And so it's not about manipulating them to come back or take advantage of them, but we can offer a lot more to them than what is possible in an hour or two session.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's where clients can come back within a shorter time frame. And I have certainly had that happen where a client says, this is, this Pluto transit, they know what they're dealing with. This Pluto transit is pretty big. And I'd really like to know that I can come back and see you in the next, whatever time frame. I'm like, absolutely. If you feel like the astrology reading and what you know about me and how I work is really going to be helpful for you by coming back, then yes, let's schedule something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but what doesn't work is when they come back and just ask the same question over and over again.
Which is what I don't want. I don't want that.
Yeah. That's something I personally also try to, when people ask, so when should I come back? First of all is whenever you need clarity in your life.
Yeah. And that's
Whether,
usually what comes down, right?
and that's usually at a crossroad when something comes up. But there is a tendency, some clients who will, be fascinated by the reading, and then they come back and it's like you start all over again. Nothing really has been integrated. And they come back a month after month and you realize it may not be so productive.
And I'd rather have it, for me, and I'm sure for all of us, we'd rather be of use and to be productive. And so I would definitely put an end to that, for me. That would just, I think it would just annoy me.
Moon, any comments and additions?
Your microphone's not operating, Moon. We're not hearing you.
Oh, now I think it's good.
No, it's now there. Now say something. Nope, still can't hear you.
She's not muted.
No, she's not.
There was a sound a few minutes ago that sounded a little electronic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can type
it sounded like a little click or something.
Maybe you can type it, Moon, in the chat box. So,
No.
Did you see that question by Angie Blissbridge in the chat room? She
Yes.
says, on a relationship situation.
Yes, the question is, if a spouse is sent to you for a reading, and it becomes clear that they are there to appease the client, how do you handle it?
I've had that happen. How about you, Kay?
Oh yes, I've definitely had that happen. I mean, if they're already there, they're there, right? Yeah. And they've already paid for the session and taking up your time. But I discourage it. One of the things I say in my website around gift certificates is please only give a gift certificate to someone who wants a session, not someone you think needs the session.
Yeah. And, the other thing I say in this particular regard is that if you are, whoever is in my consultation room, it's their time. So I don't relate to them as, your partner. They are an entity. Now they came to seek my counsel. So they are going to get all my focus, and I'm not going to appease them if they don't need to be appeased. So whatever the reading brings is what's going to be honestly delivered, regardless of whatever the agenda of that person was sending them.
Mm-hmm.
I try to check in with them to just find out their level of true discomfort for being in my office, or their true level of resistance, and to see if there's any curiosity at all. And so if there's not, then I'm not gonna pursue it. I'll refund the money if it's already been paid. It's just not, it's really not a space I want to be in, trying to give information to somebody who really doesn't want to be there. But if they express any interest, sometimes what happens is, even if it's marginal interest, their eyes are open to something about themselves, and then it shifts from, oh my God, my wife, my husband wanted me to be here, to I really do want to be here. There's something here for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I'm reading Moon's message for a way to bring back clients. I offer a 5-part natal chart reading and a quarterly forecast for people who want to go in depth in their natal chart. They can come many times in a row. So it's in a way, I think, Kay, you may have that too, where people can pay for a package reading, like pay, for 3 readings and get a discount, and so they can schedule their readings through a time span of 5 readings. And This way, you know, they commit to 5 readings and they can come whenever they want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, no, I do that. I offer a substantial discount for people to commit to a package because I feel like that the process of a few sessions helps go much deeper into the astrology and helps people understand themselves more fully. But I also feel one of my points I had about bringing clients back and getting referrals is I feel it's very important that we care about our clients. And of course, a lot of this comes from my own spiritual and psychosynthesis training, but I feel that to be truly caring and compassionate to people and to have that come across to people so that they feel it is healing for us. It's healing for the person. It draws them back. And sometimes, especially when astrologers are newer, they're trying to be very professional. They can also shut down. So there's this fine line we walk around cultivating care and compassion and still being professional. That I think is an important thing for new astrologers to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree. This, you know, I think the best remedy and the best strategy for a return client is give them a great reading.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll want to come back. And this means not, like you say, this knowing your astrology, but also being a human being and conveying that you really care about them
Exactly.
in a professional way.
Mm-hmm.
And Moon is saying the first session we discuss what interests you about your natal chart, then we divide that into 5 1-hour sessions so we can go deeper. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So on this note, I think, you know, we have covered many, many different aspects of the practice. I believe people, you know, got a lot from this little exchange. And we realize how important it is to have this discussion because astrologers don't always meet to speak about what's going on inside the consultation room. So this is referring back to the consultation skill program, to the peer group, to I-Astrologer. So we're grateful that this is available and that we're expanding the professional practice, hoping to really elevate the quality of service. Not, you know, what I say is the world needs more qualified astrologers. Not just astrologers, but good astrologers, because we have a lot of power and we can make some damage as well. So these considerations, ethical considerations, knowing where the marketing, you know, the boundaries of marketing, and yet knowing how to prosper in our practice. All these negotiations are critical, and it's a work in progress. We learn as we go. So thank you, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you very soon in Tucson.
We'll see you then. Thanks, Maurice. Thanks, Kay, Moon.
Thank
Great to be
you.
with you. See you then.
Thank you, Moon. We don't hear you, but we feel you. Take good care, everyone.
Thanks. Take care.
Do I just click the X, I guess?
Yeah, end meeting.